There we go. All right. All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Dr. Miriam. Thank you for being here.
It's such a pleasure. I'll
Glad you
work
can
on
hear
the
me.
tech piece for the future.
I was like, oh, we'll take 10 minutes. It'll be no problem. We'll set it up. So it's okay. Next time, I'll know we'll do this a day in advance. So we have plenty of time to look at all the different things. So welcome, everybody, whoever is here with us. I do have some questions so I have to ask you, did you get to listen to or watch your episode?
Yes, I was fascinated because remember when we spoke, it was just so organic and so natural. And then afterwards, I wondered, even in real time when we spoke afterwards, and I'm like, what just happened?
What just happened? Right. Where did we go? What did we say? What happened? I don't remember because it was literally like being channeled. And then we were over and we are like, oh, what happened? Yeah. And I only because I edited did I know, but
Classic.
well, it was great. I mean, I didn't know where we were going with the conversation on spirituality and medicine. I love that you put that as a topic, and so I'm all about exploring that. And I've had several comments today from people in my community. Well, this week, not just today, that some people have listened to it more than one time, and they really enjoyed again the energy of both of us, and then what you were talking about, and they just fell in love with you. So, and I know I've gotten some really great feedback, obviously, from your community on the Instagram post. So so with that said, with the things that I do have one question that came up with one of my members, and I'm going to find it. I think it was about chia seeds, and randomly enough, chia seeds. We
Love
didn't. I
them.
don't.
Love them.
Right.
Use them. In fact, funny, we were talking about residency and kind of the culture of medicine or the unspoken curriculum in medical training and how that can sometimes be an interference field to this connection to the deep spiritual aspects that are pervasive in medicine if only we open up that space and include it. And this is a little bit unrelated, but I was an early adopter of the chia seed, which is now more widely accepted. So I'd be walking around with what looks essentially like frog's eggs or like little pollywogs in the water. People would look at me and be like, Miriam, I guess they were used to me showing up with like, what the fridge are you drinking?
What do you have today? What weird experimental thing do we have from you today? Right. So the question was on chia seeds. I don't remember. Did we talk about chia seeds?
We
Anyway,
did
we
not,
must
but
have.
I love talking about chia seeds.
Well, other than that, or else Cammie's just channeling your love for chia seeds. She
Must
asked,
be.
are they good for helping you stay hydrated, and can they be considered a probiotic?
Oh, interesting. Well, chia seeds are considered a superfood and they're full of fiber, originally used by the Inca on the Inca Trail because they're so small and pack a big nutritional punch and are dense when they're hydrated. So I think they can keep you full. So let me think about this. I know that to the extent that they are fiber and that fiber is food for the microbiome, they can function as a prebiotic. Meaning the way I like to think about that is if you have probiotic that are healthy and then you have prebiotic, it's like flowers, you're planting beautiful flowers in your garden and you want that beautiful soil and or rather fertilizer, if you will. So in that sense, it's part of building a healthy microbiome. It's also a natural source of omega-3s. And I think that expansion, that kind of gel state is lubricating to the bowels. So did I answer that question? So
She asked, are they good to help you stay hydrated? And then you answered it in terms of, you said a prebiotic versus a probiotic.
yeah, they're prebiotic versus a probiotic. And in terms of hydration, I guess the fact that they hydrate and hold that kind of gel texture, it's a way of filling your belly with something that isn't necessarily solid, but has water as part of its volume. And so I guess in that sense, it could be both a food and a hydration, which is why oftentimes we make a gel out of it, right? In water or pudding. So it makes sense. I wouldn't rely on it as your sole source of
Exactly.
hydration.
Right. I know. And I'm thinking when she wrote that, I thought, I don't remember again, but it was a good episode, over an hour long, I think. I don't remember talking about chia seeds on our episode, except that nutrition wasn't something most doctors have any
We
right.
definitely spoke about
We
that.
talked about that. I remember very clearly. So she just picked up chia seeds. So, okay. And I have to ask, after you listened to it or watched it, is there any concepts that you talked about on the show? So for those of you that haven't heard or seen, there is a video. If you're here on YouTube, the next video over, I don't know what direction it is this week's right, is this week's show with Dr. Miriam Rahav. We did spirituality and medicine, and it's also on the podcast. It's on all the podcasts, so I'm not going to give you a specific number, but it's the most recent one on all of the podcasts behind me, which you can't really see because I'm in a smaller window today. But on Fit to Love, nutrition, alternative medicines, spirit, purpose, and energy, health and wealth. I'm missing one. Women, men, and relationships. It's even on that show.
Oh my God, all the amazing content that you create and put out. It's so amazing.
Thank you. Was there anything that when you went back to listen to it that you thought might be new for your population?
I think what I went back to and felt like just the idea, I think, first of all, there was so much ground I felt we covered in just introducing me to your community and the backstory. And then it took a while to get into this concept of what is spirituality and medicine. And I think the concept is more, maybe more new also in my own meditation, because I remember, this opportunity to speak with you that came up, and I put down this topic, and there was a lag between when I put down the topic and when we met and actually spoke about it. And of several months. And I wondered even to myself, how did that topic come to me, and where exactly and how would I speak to it? And I feel like only during the talk and even after the talk was I able to expand my own consciousness, or not expand isn't quite the right word, but focus on what it was within medicine. And I think maybe it helped me process as we spoke and the questions that you were asking me. Where are the places where spirituality and medicine should walk hand in hand all the time? But where are the places in medical training and the pressures of medical training, which I think I started to describe, just the numbers game and the sheer volume of information that we're responsible for, that we can't necessarily, everything is so sped up, right? I think the concept that's new to communities in general that might be helpful for me as a physician, having gone through physician training, is what are the pieces of medical training and the culture of medicine that might not be, that someone who hasn't gone through that might not be aware of, that are influencing those professionals that people are seeking help from.
In a positive way or in a disconnected way?
Maybe both. I think I spoke to both. I think I spoke to this idea that in an acute care situation, doctors really are incredibly well trained. Certainly my training program, I really think, is one of the best training programs in the country. I shout out to Montefiore. I mean, they did an amazing internal medicine training program. And that idea that when there's an acute care issue, that we snap to attention, that we are a well-oiled machine, that, that's where you don't have time to question. And that's where you want someone to snap to attention and move quickly and decisively. And so that is precisely one of the strengths of my training, and knowing how to think and having that very logical and rational thought process, systematic thinking. Where that I think may fall short is in the setting of anything that's not imminently acute, right? And I started speaking to the places of uncertainty, or how it's difficult in the culture of medicine to say, I don't know, as part of your training. And we spoke that sometimes that is the most fair, the best, the answer with most integrity. And then the other thing about spirituality in medicine, I said, is about holding space for uncertainty, holding space for our emotional reactions with that we can experience with any confrontation of a dis-ease, of something that's not working right in the body, of something very scary. Let's say you get a big label. And of course, we connected to each other through the integrative oncology community. So the word is cancer, right? You've got cancer are words that no one wants to hear. However, pre-COVID, the data shows that 1 out of 2 people in the United States of America will be confronting those words in their lifetime. That is basically flip a coin. And so how are we going to respond? And how are we going to hold space? And how can we take the crisis, right, through consciousness, which my idea or contention, if you will, is that we that's where the spiritual training, the pause, that space between the stimulus and response, so that we can choose how to respond. We can reframe, spiritual training, spirituality in medicine, and spirituality in general, because we are confronted as a society. Maybe, we're all confronting health crises of various ilk, and it's what's out there, the fear about health, the fear of infection, the fear of fear, right? And as a force to allay that, and to help us reframe and recontextualize and say, well, can we turn that into an opportunity? If we reframe it and recontextualize it, that's the space. How do we respond? Can we say, well, isn't it potentially helpful that health is at the forefront of our national consciousness? And how can we step into that space and say, I will recontextualize and reframe my fear of getting infectious disease as an opportunity to really focus on my health and my well-being, and understand what are the things that I can do to support my health, or what might be my exposures, energetic, physical, nutritional, environmental, that I have an empowered to work on in order to shift my terrain, so that my terrain is no longer hospitable potentially to a viral infection or another infection, or to cancer for that matter, or to heart disease, and on and on and on. It's that space, I think, is what I really wanted to speak to, and really focus on exploring what that means. And I think that's a newer conversation in medicine in general, and maybe that idea of how spiritual training, what that means is really slowing down. And what helps us slow down, so a spiritual practice, for example, is meditation, where we slow down and we become aware of our thoughts. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize I was thinking that all the time. I didn't realize how I was just on an autopilot of fear thoughts. I was on autopilot. It turns out, and I think Joe Dispenza speaks to this incredibly poignantly and practically, that on any given day, we have the 99% of the same thoughts we had the day before. And if we stop and we slow down, that the meaning of meditation and space, and it can be, what spiritual practice and prayer is a meditation. These are all, we're actually tapping into, and this is, I think, another place where I can do more with medicine and spirituality, is that we in our body, in our physiology, have a physical hardware via the vagus nerve, via the pineal gland, right? So that medicine can anchor and help teach people. And again, Joe Dispenza does this incredibly, amazingly, brilliantly well, that we have within our physiology the hardware to connect to the oneness that we are all part of. And really understanding and teaching that physiology is a space that medicine could inhabit more, as opposed to, I think, that culture and that unspoken curriculum, which is necessary within a certain context, right, of the acute care model, but hopefully not to the exclusion of everything else, which is, I think, the space that we can also inhabit in medicine, but is not the space that is valorized or that necessarily exists within the present culture of medical training.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess I probably couldn't call it spirituality in medicine if I was to talk about it. Let's say if the role was reversed, because I would be approaching it from that quantum physics understanding of, and also the neurological programming and the way that our brains are set up, and how when we have certain pathways that are always activated, we don't have access to other experiences. I mean, it becomes as simple as the path you take and the route that's created has the ability to turn on or off, whether it be our genes or our immunity or our ability to experience that which we want, because we're thinking the same thoughts, we're doing the same actions, we have the same beliefs, we're not activating parts of the brain, different parts of the brain that are either dormant, never been active, or we are afraid to do that. And again, to me, and I've gone back and forth about playing in this cancer space has been, at first I was like, oh, I don't want to deal with cancer. The emotional root of cancer, besides, and Nasha, we've talked about this, the ultimate disconnect from your body, disconnect from yourself. Besides that, it's also the emotional root for a lot of the cancers, or you just look up cancer, it's giving up. There's a part of like giving up. Now, I don't believe that's everybody, now that I've worked with enough people in different kinds of cancers, and I feel really confident about one, and I feel really confident that the other one is going to have a come to Jesus moment in order to kind of come out of. Again, but that's in my short time of dealing with patients and cancer patients, and seeing the progress and seeing the patterns that come up with their lives, and in what chakra center, what energy center their cancers emerge, and what information that tells us about their ability to connect with themselves. The way that I look at it is that above all of it, it really becomes this our body's ability to heal itself, and how when we're so attached to a protocol, we don't necessarily change the container's reaction because we're still in a stress response, and we're not in the feeling response that allows the new neural pathways, or that allows the body to heal itself. So to me, and I often think, because of the work that I've been doing, and I'll walk into, I think I told you the story, I walk into a doctor's office and I'm horrified that a doctor's wanting to go down a path of saying, well, this is what's going to happen, and this is the only thing that can happen to you. And I'm thinking, that's not true at all. You just gave me a 15% chance of this bad thing happening, and we didn't talk at all about the 85% chance of it happening in the way that I wanted to. How unfair is that I'm then being able to ask? So to me, it's not even spirituality, it's epigenetics. It's epigenetics and its neural pathways opening us up to, again, asking the body to do what it's meant to do, which is to provide for us, and to not necessarily compensate in a bad way, but to kind of come in and do what it needs to do. And for me, that's the emotional piece. That's the emotional piece that people that still meditate, they may meditate, they may be aware, because then there's that first step of, I work with healers. There's okay, well, energetically, I can change your energy. Awesome. What do you do about the computer in my brain that looks at the situation and interprets it in a way that puts me in a fear response? How is it? Why are we not looking at the perspective change? Why aren't we looking at the possibility of the manifestation of what is my part in this, versus it's a thing, like the whole industry of saying that I'm gonna fight the cancer. Like, cancer becomes an entity versus the cancer is part of you. Even that alone changes the way someone approaches their body and the love or attention, right?
So many things that you've just said. There's, I don't know, easily 50 doctoral theses that just came out of that, what you just said. And, starting with the pathways and the bandwidth, right? So, that if we're thinking the same thoughts all the time, what space do we have for new thoughts? And the new thoughts, being vibrational, that the thoughts and the words that we say open up space that actually changes and alters our DNA. And how so much of what we're doing is just what we're channeled or programmed into doing, as opposed to rediscovering and finding within a crisis is often what will. We have a potential there. We're not thinking about that. We don't have any reason to, because things are just going well enough, and we have the saying, leave well enough alone, right? And it's those words, you've got cancer, that lead to that shock, and that shock could lead to the fear response, where we just go right in. And by the way, what I experienced as a doctor in training was that the system really runs on fear. Also not just the fear that people are experiencing being there, but the fear of the providers is very
in Western or in any situation.
I think I'm speaking to the Western healing system. And again, it's not inherent in the physiology. It's not inherent. It's the culture of medicine. It's a culture. It's an unspoken curriculum. And I think that's what's new, perhaps. And people experience it experientially, but don't necessarily have, someone like me who just came from a different space or a different background, came from being an educator and having a little bit of a vocabulary there to say what is the spoken and what is the unspoken curriculum, because just that in of itself is a layer of consciousness that we need to bring in order to experience what is being said and what is not being said, and all of the unspoken messages of approval or disapproval. And at the end of the day, most of us, when not only are we afraid when we're sick, but we want our doctors to like us, and we want our doctors to care about us, and we want to trust them, and we need to.
I'm so moved looking for a gynecologist, and the trust factor, especially what's going on in the world, and to be on the same page is so important to me. And I've asked certain people for referrals, and so like my acupuncturist, for instance, and so he gave me somebody, and she couldn't fit me in right now. She's only working with certain people, and I said, "Do you have?" And I keep going back to him because there's the alignment and the beliefs all line up. And so I'm like, okay, please go back in your database and find me somebody else that you can possibly think of, because I trust. And so he came back with somebody, a man who lives, in Camarillo, or works. Anyway, I looked his website up and immediately got this wave of, and started reading, and I'm like, oh, he feels really good. Like, I am so excited. I hope I get to be a patient of his, because he has a podcast. Like, I already see, like, he's all about, anyway, we're just in alignment, and that feeling, that trust. Like, I want to be able to get that before. I don't want to have to go to an office and wonder if I'm going to trust you. I want to trust you before I get there, because we're all, especially during COVID times, we're getting used to working from home. We don't have to get in our cars and go somewhere if we don't have to. It's not, I don't want to go shop by actually showing up. I want to know before I get there that I have a know, like, and trust energetically about, that you feel good to me. And with that, I want to pop over, because Stephanie's here. Thanks, Stephanie. She's a nurse. And she asked, as a professional, when we are talking to a patient, how do we bring both Western medicine and Eastern medicine? How do we bridge both Western and Eastern? How can we merge the two very different systems?
That's a really beautiful question, coming from a practitioner who I assume has exposure to both and is trying to think about how to speak to that, if that's what I'm hearing.
She's also a 3-time breast cancer survivor. She's also she listens to Nasha and I. She's in my mastermind. She was the very first person who told me she probably listened to our show more than one time, and gave a lot of praise and really loved you, and was so excited about your episode that aired this week, everybody. So it got published. So if you're here with us live or watching in replay, please go listen to Spirituality and Medicine on the podcast. We talked about very different things than we're talking about right now. The umbrella is the same, the content is different. So Miriam, what do you say to Stephanie?
So what I would say is, sometimes I like speaking to the difference. For example, we know that in Chinese medicine, and also in Ayurveda, I would say, there's this idea of constitutions, right? So that let's say someone who has a gluten sensitivity. Some people can manifest with autoimmune disease. Some people can manifest with migraines. Some people can manifest with irritable bowel. So you have one exposure that is dysregulating. The body may manifest it in different. And does that have to do with the fact that we are constitutionally more fiery, or more like a pitta, a dosha? There's an operating system in traditional healing systems, both Chinese and Ayurveda, which are the ones that I've been exposed to, so I'll speak to those, where there's nothing within my Western medical training to describe why someone with the same say noxious stimuli might respond one way versus another. And so that's one thing that I like to think about or narrate, that we have different constitutions, which is more of an Eastern medicine concept. And so if you constitutionally tend to be someone who manifests with nerve, then the things that are cooling and soothing to nerves there might be constitutional remedies that you then have all the time. For example, someone who is more of a fiery constitution, a pitta constitution, such as myself, I tend to benefit constitutionally from things that are cooling, from things that are green, right? So there are things that we can speak to from a lifestyle or a choice, or just in terms of, it might be good for someone like me to think upon before bed and to read poetry or spirituality and not to read a thriller if I'm already fiery. Those kinds of things that we can speak to from an Eastern medicine perspective with consciousness and self-knowledge. So that's one thing. Also, in terms of the emotional body, I think we spoke to this a little bit in our original talk, and the physical body. There is no separation, for example, in Chinese medicine. And I think I remember speaking to kidneys and fear, and spleen and worry, and liver and anger, and the gallbladder and that gall, so that people who don't, I find, for example, this has been a pattern that I've noticed quite a bit. Like you started speaking about cancer and that energy of giving up, which is, not uniformly so, but helpful to understand some of these archetypes, and to speak to it and open up that space. Right? One of my favorite things, I was actually speaking to a most exquisite, beautiful human being today living with cancer, is we were talking and there was this beautiful connection, and she said, I feel hope for the first time that I'm not alone in this. And that was such a thrill in my own heart, to say, well, this is a person who is putting in the diligence, feels heard, feels held. We came up with some ideas. I was hearing very savvy, very smart, has done so much. And there were just places where I felt by slowing down that I could fit in some foundations. And it was just this beautiful synergism. And she said some things. I was like, I haven't heard of that. Oh my God, because she's been focused. She has all of her research on her story, and that I also said, what's really interesting here is that you use an acronym for a condition you have. And I didn't know what that acronym meant. And part of me as a physician doesn't want to tell you that I don't know. But in fact, I have to tell you that I don't know. And she said, oh, that's okay. It's a really rare condition. No one knows about it. And she whipped out this card that she has with a QR code that took me to a website on a foundation that told me, and she was thrilled that I said, tell me what that means. And we had this back and forth, and we were, two humans on equal standing, and I have my own body of knowledge and information. And what I set is the intention of showing up, of being transparent, of being in integrity, of caring and giving her everything I have to give. And also learning, setting the intention of learning and being open and being transparent about what I know and what I don't know. So that, and she, and it was wonderful. And she said, I feel hope. And that is exactly right. What is the remedy for the loneliness and that the overlay when you're sick of who can help me, and especially when you've seen worldwide leading experts on everything, and all the bells and whistles, that feeling, right? That's so hard, right? It's like you want to feel that connection, you want to feel that trust, you want to feel, right, hope.
I think that's a great. So for Stephanie, I want to take some of the best pieces of what you just said. As a nurse, she's a school nurse, and so I'm wondering if she's talking about her children or she's talking about the parents. And I think one of the things, knowing her, and knowing and getting to know you, that sometimes people feel. What I love about you is how much education you have, and you still get to say, yeah, well, I don't know, because it's because it doesn't threaten you, because you know what you know. And I love learning. I think in the next couple of weeks, I've got Super Gut coming out with Dr. William Davis. It's his fourth time on the show. And what I had to pause in the show when I was editing it, I realized I said to him, I go, you're a cardiologist, right? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, and I smiled because of his curiosity to keep learning and studying something outside of cardiology that now becomes his focus, because he learned something he didn't know that changed the lives of others kind of by accident, took him on a different path, but he's committed to the learning and the growing, not to defending his ego about what he knows or doesn't know. So in Stephanie's case, as a school nurse, also, whether it be with parents or with children, I have a feeling, Stephanie, you're also asking that is because some people don't feel the confidence that they there's an imposter syndrome of, am I going to get called out? Or I don't know as much about this as I do about that, but I really believe in that. And how do I communicate that when I can't be quizzed because I don't have the right answers? And I think that the underlying what you do is what you just described, of coming to the table with an intention, coming to the table with a hope for a solution, and suggesting something from a place of integrity, authenticity, desire, but not having to feel like you have to sell it or defend it or be the expert in it. And if you don't know something, then that's okay, because it's about the intentionality of how you're approaching the client or the patient, not in the test of the exam of what don't I know? Am I going to pass this? Do I know? Because often starting out, for I think everybody in whatever field, we have a little bit of that, like, am I going to pass the test? Do I have all the right answers? Am I a fraud? Is someone going to think that I don't know what I'm talking about? I'm going to bring in this topic of spirituality medicine right now and say that the heart part, the intuition part, the person part, the being present in the moment part, is that piece that it doesn't matter what you're suggesting. It's that it's in your current consciousness, it's coming up, you feel intuition about it, and you communicate in the best way possible. But ultimately, it's the other person, it's that connection to both. Okay, she said yes, you both answered that beautifully. Okay, well, I was trying to, because they were all, everything was perfect. And then I just wanted to make the whole, because I know Stephanie going, well, do I have to gather the studies and I did that. I've done that. I've done the, I have to defend myself that I know what I'm talking about. And at some point, when you trust deeply that you do know, you don't need to defend it anymore. And it does become about, let me show up for you in the way that I can, and be who I am with you, and be with you as a person, as equal people, not as some egomaniac doctor or coach or whatever, as I know better than you. Because even if I do know the answer, if you're not ready for it, if you're not in the timing of that answer, you're not going to receive it anyway. So it doesn't serve you, and it's a waste of time to force something on someone, whether you're right or not, that they're not ready to receive.
Right. And sometimes, to just add on to that, brilliantly said, my gosh, I if I haven't said it before, I just think and experience you is just so unbelievably brilliant. And it's just such a joy to speak with you. And there's so much that you say. It's so dense. I want to go back and slow down and just there's so many pearls in there. I'm still with the bandwidth and the epigenetics. We're like, oh, but what did I want to say? I wanted to say one more thing, that just to speak to the Eastern and Western. So I spoke about constitutions. The other thing I wanted to say is, for example, the body has an ability to regulate and hedge so many situations. So for example, let's say we have liver stress. Liver stress in Chinese medicine can show up as an energetic. We can see liver on the third of the tongue. I have actually a little bit now, I think I've been in a mostly fasted state. I see a little kind of heart stress on the tip of my tongue now, a little emotional stress. I love teaching about tongue diagnosis because it's something that everyone can then access in their bathroom mirror. And we can see liver stress patterns there. And again, I'll check a liver function test, what we call the LFT, where we have the liver enzymes, AST and ALT, as they are known, on your lab report. And those are totally normal. And yet you can have energetically liver stress. We will only show liver dysregulation on labs when more than 50% of the liver is offline, basically. So the body has this unbelievable ability to hedge situations. It's only when we get pulled into pretty significant degrees of dysregulation that it will even show up on lab work. And so so you have an acupuncturist who can look at a tongue, or who can, palpate, let's say, a point like large intestine 4 tends to be a tender point. But there's a point on the ankle, kind of just behind the medial malleolus, kidney 6. And when you have adrenal fatigue and depletion, you'll feel like a big cave in there. You could have normal kidney function. And yet energetically, you can feel a lack. And so I think that's where I really love, I love Chinese medicine. I love Ayurveda. I love the ability to speak to the reality that someone is going through before they get completely dysregulated, where we can handle it and optimize it on an energetic level, and where it gives us it gives me as a clinician, having been trained in Chinese clinical medicine, a vocabulary and a way to sense in a more nuanced way, so that I can speak to, because I'm doing the blood work, but many times the blood work is what we're treating. We're treating a piece of paper and the paper says, you're fine, go home. But the person says, but I don't feel fine. And I think that's the disconnect where traditional healing systems can really create this unbelievably wonderful and vital bridge to wellness.
I have a client right now who I asked her about her labs, or asked her, and she said, oh, my labs are fine. You just spoke to exactly. And my next thought was, are you doing acupuncture? And she's like, I haven't been. And I'm like, okay, you need a muscle test if this is emotional or physical, which it's both, but that's exactly the point, because the labs will say, it's almost like, the TSH labs, right? And when you are past, you are way out of, you can be, that range is so large that you have a thyroid issue way before you ever reach being out of that range on a allopathic Western diagnosis.
And furthermore, and there's a physiology to that, which was so fascinating for me to learn, which is that TSH lives in the brain, and the brain has a special circulation. It's separated from the body by the blood-brain barrier, which was created so that even if we had a toxic exposure, the brain could still be relatively protected and hopefully get us to safety, to some charcoal, some water, or whatever, that there are protective mechanisms in there. So we can have a functional hypothyroidism on a physical level before the brain registers it for years. And so what I have done vis-a-vis just exactly that talking point is that I've recalibrated in my own mind what an optimal TSH is. It's 1 or hovering around there. By the time it's 2, many people are already functionally hypothyroid, and no endocrinologist, of course, would, approach that or say, so that's just one example of how we can recalibrate. I had one brilliant hepatology supervising physician at Montefiore. They have an amazing liver transplant. And he was a DP, went on and did lots of extra training in nutrition. He was just an exceptional physician. And he said, my ideal for liver enzymes is hovering around the 20. Now, the reference range on the lab might say that they're okay at 40, high 30s. But for me, no, that's already liver damage. And so he taught me, I think that was the first time where he handed me that concept of recalibrating in my own mind what I'm looking for. So when people come to me and they're like, there's so many things in the red out of the reference range, I say, well, I care what's out of the reference range, but more importantly, I care about you. And let's go through and not pay attention. Let's go through everything and let's just see, because sometimes, if your cholesterol is considered normal under 199, milligrams per deciliter, nanograms per deciliter, and yours is 201, it's flagged as out of the range and you're really worried about your cholesterol. But for me, that's not as germane as the fact that your liver enzymes, which are flagged as normal, are actually a little bit, I say I'm raising an eyebrow. If I could, I'm still.
Right. I know I can't do that either. And I love that cholesterol example. I mean, in functional medicine, even, and I don't know about naturopathic, but I know 220 is you need cholesterol to make your hormones. Like it's not, we don't want to be low. We don't want to be too high. And again, also it's the ratio between the HDL and the LDL, but 220 isn't going to, that's what functional medicine actually would prefer, that you're around 200, 220, but yes. Allopathic, they're putting you on a statin. Then it's like, oh, you're too high. And everyone goes, oh, okay. So let me take this drug that's going to hurt me and have a lot of side effects that I didn't actually need. But anyway, it's the bridging of all of the layers and all of this, like all of the work that you've done in, again, these older practices that have been around for a lot longer, that end up influencing obviously the way that you use the medicine that you're currently using, all of them together in your own on your own unique way. And you do telemedicine, right?
Yes, that is, I think when we were speaking originally, I was like, that's one of the gifts of COVID, that all of a sudden, people got in touch with us, and that our electronic health record created this HIPAA safe, HIPAA compliant video platform that it's now, it just happened. I was like, oh, because before I was like, I don't know how to do that. And then it just manifested. I was like, thank you. That was easy.
Yeah, and well, it forced my parents online. My mother knew what Zoom was. I was like, great, and like the iPad that I bought them so we could FaceTime and stuff, right? That
Oh.
they wouldn't use before, but now they will. Well, many gifts of COVID, and not, but I like the gifts. The gifts I will take. So I just want to make sure everybody knows who's watching this, because this is appearing live right now on YouTube, and it will stay here after we're done. It's also on my Facebook business page. It's also in one of my Facebook groups, and so for those of you that aren't here with us live asking questions, you are also welcome to be in touch with Dr. Rahav. So do you want to, it's rahavwellness.com?
It is rahavwellness.com. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. In fact, let me put up a banner. Do you want to give anybody any other information about anything that they want to do or look for because again, you and I could talk for days.
We really can.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah. So I not that I want to end the conversation early or anything. I just want to make sure people know that they can get more of you, and how to do that. And because, yeah, you and I could go down a rabbit hole that not everybody wants to go down. Some people do. My people do, but maybe not everybody. So as I started to create this banner, Rahav Wellness, tell everybody what the best way, like, follow you on Instagram. Is there a Facebook page? Do they call, make an appointment? Do they download something?
So right now I have an Instagram page. It's just my name, Miriam Rahav MD. And I've taken lately too, and thanks for liking my videos. I've put a few videos up there just to start introducing topics and for people to hear my voice, and it's just a way to get out there. I'm a little behind on technology. So as we were trying to play, look, I got this mic that we didn't use.
I know, and it sounded so good. He just couldn't hear me, so he couldn't use it. That's why we were a minute late.
Oh my goodness, I was so sorry about that. So I am going to work, I think, and I also work with wonderful colleagues here. So in office, I'm collaborating actively with 3 absolutely brilliant nurse practitioners, each of them so brilliant in their own right. And they are here doing this. We call ourselves Rahav Wellness, the Center for Collaborative Healing, because we're really collaborating here. And all of these conversations that we're having, me and you, we're having these conversations internally and discussing these nuances and how mind, body, and spirit interact, and what that looks like in the individuals, the precious, and precious is exactly the word, that each person that walks through this door is a person who something is magnetizing to us. And I experience it as such an honor and a joy to do this with every person. And so we really celebrate that collectively here, our community at Rahav Wellness. So you can call us at our office, 646-503-5202, and speak to our admin team. I'm accepting new patients, so there's a bit of a lead-in time. And some people get started with one of my colleagues if there's something more urgent. For example, someone who has a new diagnosis of cancer or who wants to experience some supportive therapy, because if they've heard about mistletoe, if they've heard about IV vitamin C, and they know that these are things that may allow them to tolerate chemotherapy better, or that will help them remain sensitive to chemotherapy so that it enhances the efficacy of chemotherapy. Those are things that are time sensitive. So people will call and they will get set up with one of my colleagues. Just to hear my voice, I mean, there's so much more that needs to happen, which is another reason I'm so grateful to you for creating this platform. But I'm trying in between doctoring to put out some messages and some information. A lot more that needs to happen on that front. That's a work in progress. So Instagram, Miriam Rahav MD, Facebook, Rahav Wellness, our website, rahavwellness.com. We have some info there, although I don't think it does justice to the depth and breadth of what we're actually doing. And maybe me and you can do a little more work.
Well, you definitely, it's funny that you said that, because I just got done doing doing a campaign and a Facebook ad, and the woman who I was working with, I had to be very clear. I was like, look, I don't translate on paper. Like, I do not translate on paper, which is why the podcast is in speaking in person, sometimes video, that is the way people get me quickly and can feel me, right? It's about the feeling. It's like that alignment, that resonance. And someone who has spent 45 minutes with us right now can tell the depth of you and me. Yes, she's beautiful. Stephanie said we need more practitioners like this beautiful lady. Absolutely. And she's had so many wonderful comments on Instagram when I posted it. You do need to be shared more. And so, yeah, we could talk, but because it is, until someone hears you and on a topic such as this, that understands, I mean, they can read, but they can read your bio and that's like, okay, cool. But then when they see the artistry of, and the alchemism, if you will, of putting it all together and creating something so unique and personal and personalized, that working with someone like that, that's a whole nother level. And there are people that are looking for you. We want to help them find you. So rahavwellness.com, everybody. And yeah, you need a podcast, you need something. Anyway, like something to get you out there more, or a co-host seat or something.
When I do it, I will give you credit for encouraging me and giving me the inspiration that I can do it too.
Well, we could co-host a show called Spirituality and Medicine.
I would love
because I could talk about this all day long. Okay. Well, anyway, so please everybody go check out rahavwellness.com. Follow her on Instagram, Dr. Miriam Rahav. You're amazing. I love you.
And you're amazing. And I love you. And I'm so honored. Thank you for doing this. And thank you for doing this with me. And thank you for supporting this work and opening up a way for people to know that this exists. I think. That this level of awareness and that these nuances and this degree of thoughtfulness in medicine is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that we're not alone.
No.
Caring and loving each other through the greatest of challenges.
And I know I said in the beginning or somewhere in the middle there about the cancer being the ultimate disconnect and it be about giving up. That could also mean, it could be translated differently than giving up on life. Oh, that is a large part for a lot of people, but it's also giving up the current state of life. It doesn't necessarily mean an end. It means an end of an era. It means an end of a way of being, and it's an opportunity to change that. So is in my opinion anyway. So
I think that's so brilliant. And that's exactly what we were talking about with the reframe and the recontextualization. We say in Hebrew, and we say in English too, when one door closes, another opens. And so what if the message in cancer is, this door needs to close because this is not serving you, this life or whatever, and finding out those pieces and how can we be guided through really starting to look at the nuances and the pieces, the terrain, as Dr. Nasha so brilliantly outlines in the terrain 10, all of the moving pieces and puzzles that are the tapestry of our beingness, and what there was dysregulated, and bringing consciousness to that, because without consciousness we cannot rectify. As one person said to me as she came here after her breast cancer story, I got the diagnosis of breast cancer and it was like a runaway train that left the station, and I was just stuck on the train. And only now, when it's over, can I come and take a breath and say, well, how did this happen? And we started speaking about it. And that's when and so for her, we were given this opportunity. The train left the station, everything happened, and now we can do the work. But she took that. The brilliance of her was that she walked through that door and said, and now let's figure out what the hell just happened there, and how do I work on this? What does this mean? And we could really sit and meditate the physical, the spiritual, the emotional pieces. What a brilliant and profound person she is, and how grateful I am that she wants to do that level of nuanced thinking, physically, emotionally, spiritually with me. Unbelievable honor.
Well, you attracted it because you are it also. So you're doing great work. We want more people to be working with you, and please refer. Also tell everybody you're in New York City, right?
I am in New York City. We're in Manhattan. We're located on the corner of 7th Avenue and 15th Street, which is officially Chelsea, 1 block away from the West Village. We're right there on the border.
Oh, I miss New York. And we do have plans to try to make it back. So when we do, I'll come in and visit.
Oh my God, Can't wait.
Because I used to live in New York. I lived in New York City. I was on the Upper East Side, but I miss it, and it's been a while. And now that Broadway's reopened, we'll come back. We'll come back and say hi. So
And we
please,
have you on our website, by the way. We have
do.
our roadmap to emotional healing under our resources tab. And this concept, this all important concept that things happen on the emotional level, on the energetic level. And when they don't get addressed there, maybe there's not an opportunity, or maybe it's too fearful, or maybe it's too painful, then the body keeps that score, that very important concept that the body keeps the score. And it's, of course, a very famous book, The Body Keeps the Score. And that instead of treating the body as an enemy that's betraying you, understanding that that's actually the body's love language, that if you didn't have the wherewithal to be able to, for whatever reasons, to pay attention to what was happening energetically, it then comes into the body. And if you can take it as the loving message that something isn't right, and that this is the opportunity to address it, as opposed to cut it out or medicate it out, or, and we might need to do that as a temporizing measure, but understand also that there is meaning. It's not that lightning bolt random act that we have somehow as a collective consciousness maybe been trained to think that it's incredibly importantly meaningful. And also another concept which we can talk about maybe on another opportunity, that this is a lifetime of
Right.
many. And ultimately, we are here for evolution and spiritual ascension. And the challenges and the lessons that come up are ultimately meant to be opportunities for our ultimate ascension spiritually.
Amen, sister. Absolutely, 100%. I talk about spiritual contracts, sacred contracts, lifetimes. Absolutely. So yes, there's much more to come. Thank you so much, Dr. Rahav. Everyone, please check her out, rahavwellness.com. Please be in touch with this woman. Thank you so much.
Thank you, JJ.